To celebrate the release of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, I wanted to make a video covering the franchise. Look, I won't lie, I'm actually a bit of a sucker for these films. Tom Cruise risking his life on camera, mask impersonations, attractive women, and the power of friendship. What's not to love? Whereas most big IPs tend to slowly dwindle in quality and popularity over time, Mission Impossible avoids this. Not only does each film raise the stakes and do consistently well at the box office, but their quality just seems to get better with age. It's a rare case of a franchise starting out with some misfires, but eventually finding its footing. This is what I want to focus on today. How did Tom Cruise and co manage to pull this off? Let's compare earlier films with the later ones to see what changed. When looking at the franchise's timeline, it's actually kind of a miracle that it grew so large. While the first movie was decent, 2 and 3 are considered to be the worst of the bunch to this day. Granted, they made a lot of money and capitalized on what was popular at the time, but haven't aged as well as the later films. We can hence split up the timeline into 2 parts, pre-Ghost Protocol and post-Ghost Protocol. On their own, the first 3 films are quite entertaining action flicks. Unfortunately, the problems start to arise when you group them together as part of a franchise. While plenty of the conceptual elements introduced carry over, such as masks, cool stunts, and melodramatic espionage, the tone and style varies dramatically. This begins to make a lot more sense when you realize they had completely different directors and teams working on them. Take the first Mission Impossible film. It's actually based on a TV series from the 60s, albeit very loosely. There's very little point in me discussing this, as the films do not resemble the show in any meaningful way, merely borrowing the name and music. In fact, you'd be extremely annoyed if you're a fan of the original series, as they turn a main character into the main villain. For what it is, however, Mission Impossible 1 is actually a solid film. They got legendary director Brian De Palma to work on it, and you can feel his influence. There's plenty of effective Dutch angles and gorgeous nighttime cinematography. The focus is more on the espionage, with Ethan trying to figure out who the mole is. That CIA vault break-in sequence is still legendary, of course, a masterclass in suspense. Hence, audiences must have been shocked when the eventual sequel was released, directed by none other than John Woo. This is pretty hilarious in hindsight because his style of filmmaking is so radically different to De Palma's. Instead of tense exchanges and stunning European architecture, we got plenty of bullets, martial arts, motorbikes, and slow motion. This sudden shift in style continued again when J.J. Abrams directed the next film. Hence, Mission Impossible 3 is heavy on the helicopters, shaky cam, and explosions. In less than a decade, the IP has adopted 3 completely unique directions, with European, Asian, and American influences. This is an extremely odd thing to do for a film franchise. When fans watch sequels, they usually wish to see more of the same stuff they got in the original, only better. However, this approach makes sense when you consider Tom Cruise's filmography. Apart from Ethan Hunt, he had not played the same character twice until 2016 with the second Jack Reacher movie. Cruise did not wish to be one note in his early career, but instead continued developing his talent over a wide variety of films. This is why he waited so long before committing to a Top Gun sequel.
The studio wanted me to make Top Gun over and over, and I was like, as a young artist, I wanted to develop my talent in different areas, and I wanted to challenge myself more with different kinds of movies.
Having been a producer for every Mission Impossible film, it hence explains why he wanted different directors early on. The franchise was intended to be an anthology series, with each movie showcasing a new interpretation of Ethan Hunt and his adventures. Cruise is a man who constantly pushes himself and prioritizes the cinematic experience above all else. By having wildly different creative teams, the audience gets to broaden their palette and witness something new with each entry. While this could be a disastrous decision for most IP, it works for Mission Impossible thanks to maintaining expectations. While the style might change, all 4 initial films still contain impressive action and spy sequences, which is why the audience have come to watch them in the first place. Obviously, they vary in quality dramatically, and everyone is going to prefer some over others. That being said, I respect his commitment to constantly reinvent the formula. Eventually, Cruise would settle on a style he liked though. With the huge success of Ghost Protocol, subsequent entries began to adopt a consistent palette. We will take a look at what sets these later films apart. However, I also want to hear from you guys. What's your favorite Mission Impossible film? Personally, I toss up between Fallout and Ghost Protocol and find it hard to pick between the two. Let me know yours down in the comments below, and be sure to leave me a like while you're there too. While tons of different factors go into every single production, most of Mission Impossible's uptick in quality can be attributed to one man, Christopher McQuarrie. After collaborating with Cruise for Valkyrie and Jack Reacher, he would go on to direct every film from Rogue Nation onwards. That being said, his influence is felt heavily in Mission Impossible 4. You might not notice as he is uncredited, but the future director actually contributed greatly to the screenplay of Ghost Protocol. In fact, Cruise mentioned in his panel with Edith Bowman that he brought him to the set of the Burj Khalifa sequence, where he came up with the line, "Blue is glue, red is dead." This isn't to discredit director Brad Bird, as I loved his focus on gadgets and teamwork. What I'm trying to highlight, however, was that McQuarrie sowed the seeds for the franchise's increase in quality and, more importantly, consistency. Each subsequent entry would build upon Mission Impossible's mythos, introducing organizations like the Syndicate and reoccurring characters such as Ilsa Faust. These were no longer one-off adventures, but started to feel connected as part of a larger scheme. This was especially obvious with Solomon Lane's return in Fallout, serving as a great foil for Ethan's morality. McQuarrie's focus wasn't just on story, however, but action too. At the end of the day, that's what Mission Impossible is all about, right? Cruise wouldn't just continue to risk his life for the camera, but do so more with each entry. Think of all the grand set pieces we've been able to watch and you'll see this progression. The Burj Khalifa climb in Ghost Protocol, free dive in Rogue Nation, Halo jump in Fallout, and motorbike skydive in Dead Reckoning. Whenever a new film is in development, Cruise tries his absolute best to perform stunts that are somehow even more dangerous than the last. The final Reckoning manages to top this too, with a submarine diving sequence and biplane chase that really put the impossible in Mission Impossible. However, new stunts alone aren't the only reason for the franchise's uptick in quality. In fact, one important factor that separates the newer films apart from the first 3 installments is the editing. This is Eddie Hamilton, and like McQuarrie, has been a permanent addition to the team from Rogue Nation onwards. To demonstrate just how important his job has been, I'd like to compare 2 similar sequences. This motorcycle chase from the second film, and this one from the 5th. Yes, both are stylistically different. However, the reason the latter works so much better is due to pacing and rhythm. Take a look at this scene from Mission Impossible 2. Yes, Cruise looks awesome riding a motorcycle. However, there's a reason the action looks slightly off. After he shoots the car tire, notice how the continuity of the cuts don't line up in any meaningful way. We get the same shot of Ethan Hunt passing by the car from multiple angles, cut between the drivers drifting and attempting to slow down. Due to the way it's edited, however, everything is completely out of order and jumps between different moments in time. Showing the same event from different angles can work if it's edited like an action replay. However, adding the driver's perspectives at different points defeats the purpose. Additionally, it's hard for our eyes to follow what's happening. The subject of the frame is towards the right side here, but then we cut 180 degrees to Cruise on the opposite side. Given the shots barely last half a second, the audience have to constantly dart their eyes around the screen to be able to tell what's going on. Compare this to Eddie Hamilton's editing in Rogue Nation. Instead of rapid-fire cuts to mask the theatrics, there's a certain rhythm to the action. The chase starts with wide establishing shots to clearly outline what's going on. As the intensity begins to ramp up, this is reflected in the editing with closer framing and more frequent transitions. Most importantly, however, whenever Hamilton cuts, he keeps the subject of the frame in roughly the same position. This makes it much easier for an audience to follow along, as their eyes don't have to move around the screen as much. Mad Max Fury Road also employed this technique to great effect. It definitely helps prolonging each shot, allowing us to fully immerse ourselves in the action. At the end of the day, you can do whatever cool stunts you want, but it won't be exciting to watch without robust editing and camera work. Gone are the days of Mission Impossible 3's shaky camera that makes it hard to see anything. Thanks to McQuarrie's direction, Hamilton's editing, and Cruise's insistence on risking his life even more, the franchise has managed to increase in quality with each new entry, while also keeping a consistent style. As cool as it was to have completely different directors, I wasn't too big on what John Woo and JJ Abrams did. By keeping the same people going forward, however, we can trust them to deliver exactly what we want. There's one more thing I want to talk about, however, something that's a bit more meta and goes beyond what we watch on screen. Tom Cruise is 62 fucking years old. Now nerds, it wasn't a mistake that I put the word age in the title of this video. Despite Cruise now being in his 60s, we got a brand new Mission Impossible film only a few weeks ago. I know it was marketed as the final entry, however, the movie star has stated that he would be happy to continue making action films in the future.
Maybe movies, actually I'm going to make them into my hundreds. I'll never stop doing action, drama, comedy, films. I'm excited.
This is the thing that impresses me the most and makes each new film even more fascinating to watch. He continues to perform even riskier stunts. However, this starts to make sense when you take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Tom Cruise is Hollywood's antidote to the concept of the aging hero. This is a trope that has been done to death across multiple franchises. As the hero gets too old, they'll shift towards a mentor role to teach the next generation, taking a step back from the adventure. I actually don't have an issue with this trope when it's done well. At the end of the day, no one can risk their lives on dangerous missions forever, so it's a good thing to know when to take a step back. That being said, you'll catch Tom Cruise dead before he decides to do the same. Nowhere is this more apparent than in Top Gun Maverick. At first, we believe that Cruise will act in this mentor role for the entire film. Towards the end of the second act, however, he says, "Fine, I'll do it myself," and goes absolutely beast mode on the training course. It's an attitude that extends beyond the film and sums up Cruise's entire philosophy. I will teach the next generation of actors, however, I will also refuse to stop doing what I love. The same thing can be seen in The Final Reckoning too, so skip to this timestamp if you want to avoid spoilers. Given the marketing of the film touted it as Ethan Hunt's last mission, I was pleasantly surprised when he not only saved the day, but survived doing it. Other franchises usually kill off their protagonists to give them one last hurrah. However, like I said earlier, Cruise rages against the aging hero concept. This is him sending a clear signal to the film industry. I love my job and I'll continue doing it no matter what. At the end of the day, that's why the Mission Impossible movies have gotten better over time. Tom Cruise was 34 when the first film came out, and shows no sign of backing away from the action anytime soon. By refusing to pass the torch, it just makes his death-defying stunts even more impressive to watch in his 60s. I'm looking forward to seeing what's in store for Cruise and the Mission Impossible franchise in the future. If you've enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to leave me a like and subscribe for more videos like this one.